Is it going to work a year from now, 5 years from now? Is it going to work when you 10x it and grow? Like, what's the breaking point? There's no knowledge base around that.
Welcome to Contrary to Popular Opinion, a podcast hosted by Vujade Digital. In each episode, we bring you provocative topics and novel perspectives around leadership, business, and marketing that defy the norms because exponential growth demands unconventional thinking and visionary action. So open your mind and let's get into this week's episode.
But the full funnel, knowing how every single interaction, the journey, the flow, how people consume, the psychology behind things, that's what really gives you a full engine that lets you really say, okay, I can move the needle here and I can pull this lever and I can insert this and I can create my own momentum versus just hoping for a gust of wind. The ability to kind of really show that data and that correlation and that forecasting is a big overcoming of that barrier of convincing people, if you give me more money, I have mathematically backed and statistically strength relevance that shows you will get more than what you give me back in returns. And that becomes really powerful.
So I'm going to pick on what you just said a little bit in the industry. I would say we're a small agency, so we don't come across the big brands, but let's say the small to mid-market size brands that are spending 1 to 20 million annually in media. I would argue, based on what I've seen, 25% or less of those brands with budgets of that size are deploying anything like this. Because when we encounter them, most of them don't have this. So why do you think that is? Well, how could you be spending 5, 10, 15, or $20 million a year in media, but not have a sophisticated mathematical model to help adjust decision logic to where things contribute? Or you said correlation, contribution, those kinds of things. Like, if, first of all, do you agree that it's a much less percentage of people using it than are using it? Would you agree to that?
I would absolutely agree to that. And I would take it one step further. And I would say the smaller majority of the ones that are probably are not doing it either right or as effectively as they should be, because there's a lot of problems on that front that I could get into as well.
We know that because we've taken over some of those. But that being said, if that's the case, if you're a marketer and you knew that the data science is good enough now that and the cost of the tools and the resources to implement are reasonable if you're spending 10 or $20 million a year in media, why would you not have this in place?
It's hard. It's hard, and you have to pay for it. It takes time. And
let's assume you can budget it, right? If you're spending $10 million a year on media buying, you've got your pretty good sized marketing budget, right? That's because that 10 million is only a percentage of the overall marketing budget. So if the overall marketing budget is $20 million, that's 10% of revenue, then you're a pretty good sized company. Why would you not be doing that?
I mean, I absolutely think you should. I think the reason you wouldn't be is because what I said is it costs money, but at that point, I mean, in the fractions of it, but it does still cost money. You have to commit to investing in it. It takes time and it takes expertise. So you have to have a champion or a partner who cares enough to bring the solution to the table, because it also creates more accountability, which not everyone wants, but I think obviously that should exist more, because for better or for worse, more accountability is more scrutiny, is more responsibility, is more outcome. And, there's a side of this industry that doesn't always like to do that. I don't want to go too far down that slippery slope, but again, you have to have someone who is looking out for the best interests and wants that and can action it and can use it, because yes, it costs time and it costs money and it takes expertise, and it also requires commitment to seeing it through. You're going to have to redo the way campaigns are set up and structured and data is collected, and it just requires so much more cleanliness and responsibility and fidelity of work that, again, I would argue if I was in charge of Brown, that would absolutely be what I was mandating. But there's so many moving parts and there's so many responsibilities, and people tend to wear so many hats these days. It's just really easy that doesn't always come across as the next biggest priority or the next right thing and all of that. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of white space for these tools or these capabilities to be getting sold into these brands, but every one of these brands is being sold 1,000,005 different things at any given time.
Do you still believe that the traditional funnel of awareness, consideration, purchase intent, buy, all this, do you think that still exists?
I think it's kind of a crazy question to ask because I think it's more important now than it's ever been because we've never been in a noisier and harder to break through and more competitive and more difficult to connect with and sort of ADD audience and attention starved audiences that there's ever been. And so to think that you can just sort of show up and win with singular tactics, I think is wild. But I also know where it came from. And we've had this conversation for so long. There was a moment in time, not that long ago, that it did exist. And quite frankly, Facebook was the main driver of why that happened. We've had this conversation a lot where there was this entire ecosystem that sprouted up where you could just get a product that had any kind of novelty to it, put it into market, put pretty much a singular type of advertising or even influencer type marketing or something like that, and it would go gangbusters and you would get unbelievable returns. That has been mirrored and replicated a little bit now with like TikTok Shop and some other things that create this, I don't have to try that hard. I just have to sort of be somewhere at the right time with the right thing and have a right combo and I can move. It's sort of the concept of like fast fashion versus, long established brand fashion, which I think encapsulates a lot of this argument. So it is possible to not do full funnel. I don't think it is a long-standing and healthy approach to business. I think you could get short-term gains if you're very lucky and you catch a wave or you capture lightning in a bottle. I think it is luck-driven, and I don't think there's any control to it. I don't think it's a way to build a business or have any sustainability. Quite frankly, I think the opposite. I think what you'll see is you'll get brands or companies that get lucky and then they reach a ceiling and then they're really stuck in a place where they don't know what to do with themselves. They're like, I've reached my pinnacle and now I've never been forced to spend money to get this before. I've never had to build a marketing funnel. I've never had to do these things. Now I want to grow and expand and my organic has sort of reached its plateau and they're at a loss. And they certainly don't like spending the dollars required to sort of make up a lot of ground that they got lucky enough to have to not grind their way into. And so the full funnel, I think, is what gives you the most control over your own destiny and the most data and understanding of how to strategically and in an owned way be able to grow and manage your business in that growth. Everything else, if you don't have full funnel and you don't really understand every stage, is you're just kind of throwing things out there and hoping it sticks and hoping you get lucky. And the problem is sometimes you do get lucky, and that creates confirmation bias where it's like, well, that works. So my thing must be so great that it's better than every other brand that doesn't have to do this. And it almost creates this education of like, I don't need full funnel because I did this thing and it worked. Well, yeah, it worked now. Is it going to work a year from now, 5 years from now? Is it going to work when you 10X it and grow? Like, what's the breaking point? There's no knowledge base around that. But the full funnel, knowing how every single interaction, the journey, the flow, how people consume, the psychology behind things, that's what really gives you a full engine that lets you really say, okay, I can move the needle here and I can pull this lever and I can insert this and I can create my own momentum versus just hoping for a gust of wind.
So a lot of the work that we're really focusing on is on the front end. Obviously, media is a big part of what we execute on, but a lot of the critical thinking is on the front end and communication strategy, thinking about user journeys, thinking about the UI UX, about the creative, about the message, about the audiences. That stuff all sort of needs to, I think, be built to go through a full funnel experience, customer experience, which I think you're lobbying for is still the most valuable long-term business building framework. I don't know that any of that matters anymore because it seems to me like AI now is really going to shapeshift creative and messaging into just data signals. It's no longer going to be about a master creative brief for a brand and what that brand stands for. It's just going to be whatever signals tell the visual imaging system, AI system, that this is what drives the most sales within a particular audience cohort, just do more of that. And then so the whole idea of creative is just, it's gone. It doesn't exist anymore.
The analogy that comes to mind for me is, and again, I'm not a creative person, so I have no idea how this would be received by a creative person.
Well, neither am I, but I would be meeting.
But I would almost liken it to if before the creative person was the athlete, now they're the coach and they evolve into that, right? Now they're guiding it. Now they're providing the frameworks. They're still very responsible for the outcomes. They're just maybe going to be less on the court doing it versus being the one sort of coaching and guiding it and making sure those outcomes get there. And arguably, I mean, a lot of people would say the coach is more important than the player in a lot of ways. So I think that there still has to be the heart. There still is the Simon Sinek's why of a brand. You still have to feed the engine and give it guidance and give it consistency. And so I still think there's a lot of creativity into that and creating sort of the reference points that iteration comes off of. But yeah, I mean, I think that end product is going to get further and further away from being in the sole control over creative people individually.
Good thing I didn't go into the creative side of advertising. I wasn't good at it anyway. All right. So
I mean, it's not that much different on the paid media side of things as well. I mean, as far as audience targeting and decisioning and ad formats and things like that, it's going a similar way as well.
Well, that will be for the next series, continuation of this. I want to talk about, obviously, AI, how it's starting to encroach into media management, media measurement. Is it task or is it brain? I want to talk about the agency model and where does it go relative to, I'm seeing the headlines now that are saying AI is going to replace media buying, for example, entirely in the next year. Like, you won't need a media agency. There'll be AI systems that you just basically have it look at your website, your product or service you sell, tell it who your ideal customer profile is, and it will do it automatically for you. I wonder if that's true. Again, is it more task management or is it strategic human smarts? So we'll talk about that and a little bit more about technology and data. So my last question for you is not the last ad you can remember seeing. Did you see the news over the weekend about all of the talent agencies wanting to sign this AI actress? And do you have an opinion about that?
I did see it. I think it's interesting around sort of talent agent and how that works in terms of that. I think my most interesting takeaway that I read throughout all of that was the inherent sort of defensiveness of, like, people don't want to watch just AI yet. And that struck me as very assumptive in that, sure, maybe not yet, but at the end of the day, I think consumers will like whatever's quality and best. I don't know that there's going to be backlash just because it's AI. It would only be if the AI is not good enough to truly deliver a quality product. But at the end of the day, I think if you good AI actress that you couldn't really tell the difference and immersed you in the story the same way an actor or actress does, I think the general public would accept it overall. You could have the greatest tool in the world and the greatest data scientists there are. If you don't have the fuel or the data that will arm you with this, the best you can do is start to build towards a future outcome with a certain level of reliability. And I would argue there's still value in doing that. The sooner you go towards that, the sooner you can get to a reliable outcome. But it's not just useful from day one unless you have strong historical data to arm and train it. It's kind of like the LLMs right now in sort of the AI world, right? It's all about the training data and the information that informs it that it can train on to give you the right outputs. Works the same way. You need consistent structured data. And so the better you can do, the better you can collect it, the better off you're going to be, but also you can build towards getting that even cleaner and stronger. And so the relationship between all of your marketing activities, I guess maybe that's another one that I can look at as a myth, is it doesn't only look at media outcomes. That would be the media mix modeling, but the marketing mix modeling can account for other variables. Essentially, really anything that contributes to a certain percentage of your outcomes, whether that's PR impressions or social media activities or seasonality, or there's all these components that can be plugged in. If you have access to that information, it's consistent, it's predictable, and you can plug it in a realistic way. And so
that is the correlation of all of the moving parts that are creating results, and the ability to start to measure and recognize patterns that indicate likelihood of what can or is happening in relation to those.
Okay, so you talk about a lot of the parts and pieces that are needed. Paint the picture of a brand journey for me to answer the question of, when does it become worth it to invest in the effort that it takes? And is there a point where you're too small before that starts? So think of it this way. You started a brand, in your case, a soccer equipment accessory manufacturing brand. So you make balls and jerseys and gloves and shin guards and all this kind of cool stuff. And you just launched, and you've got this state-of-the-art technology that's making the best products because of the best materials ever. But you just started the company, and you don't have enough data to train it, but you've got a lot of money. Talk about when, where, and how the ability to actually use it works. You talk about training. So you probably can't do it as a startup company, right? Because you have to have a lot of data. You might not be able to do it because you don't have enough money. Like, what are the moments when a brand should be thinking about, okay, now I have what it takes, data, money, time, resources, whatever, in order to implement something like this so that I will get consistent, accurate, trend-worthy information that I can make decisions off of? When does that moment happen?
I think it's a unique answer to right now versus what my answer to this would have been maybe even like a year ago. And a lot of that is done with AI tools right now and what it's allowing for. I think the question is better broken up into the scale of correlation modeling that I would access. Because with AI and the tools that are in there right now, I would argue that you can start to look at it in this frame of reference and frame of mind pretty much right now without major costs or investments, if you have the right mindset or skill set or the right people working on your business. That's kind of a different thing to go into. But the ability to kind of look at the patterns and relationships between moving parts can be done pretty well within the systems that happen right now. But that's a very loose, informal way of doing it. That's just a matter of cleaning up your own data and your own media things right now. That's something that I do for our clients a lot right now. There is a next phase of that, which would have been the full answer I would have given, say, a year ago before some of this, which is a true invested, tool-based, data science-driven, real full fidelity mixed media model that costs with that. The answer to that would be when the outcomes and the information at that full investment are, I would say, maybe 5 to 10% of what my total spend is.
Thanks for listening to Contrary to Popular Opinion, where we challenge you to think independently, push the limits, and take uncommon action so you can achieve game-changing results in your business and your life. To stay up to date with our latest episodes, be sure to click the follow or subscribe button now. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.